Episode 253 of the HHH Racing Podcast is brought to you by Hawthorne Racecourse, Chicagoland's hometown track, and the Adelphi Racing Club.
Adelphi Racing Club, offering a truly personal racing experience. Looking to own thoroughbred racehorses and win at the highest level circuits? We're not just a syndicate, and our members aren't just investors. We are partners. Experience the Adelphi difference. Join the club today. Contact us to get a taste of the Adelphi experience and come hang with us this Saratoga meet.
And now let's start episode 253 of the HHH Racing Podcast.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 253 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your proud host, Howard Kravitz. It is Derby week. The post positions have been drawn for the 149th Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby this Saturday, and also drawn for the Kentucky Oaks. Thanks for joining us tonight as we have a very special show. We're going to give our quick reaction of the post position draw and then in detail go through the top 10 horses by odds in this year's Derby. Please make sure you follow me on Twitter at @HKravitz. It's right there on the bottom of the screen on the name tag. And you can also email me, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Last year, this show, our top 10 Derby show, was the most watched show of the entire year. We had over 16,000 views last year. And last night's show, the bottom 10 Kentucky Derby horses preview already has close to 1,100 views. So check out episode 252 as well. Thanks for joining us again. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Smash that thumbs up button. That will tell the YouTube algorithm this is a fantastic show, and we'll send people to the podcast. We really appreciate that. And also hit that notification bell so that you don't have to go onto the YouTube channel. You can automatically just be informed when new content pops up. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, we have a show tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Bettin and Boozin guys will be here again 9 p.m. Eastern to give their reaction of the Kentucky Oaks draw and their early look at the Kentucky Oaks. We've got two shows tomorrow, Tuesday. We have two shows on Wednesday, and then Thursday is our big Kentucky Derby roundtable discussion. Almost all of the hosts will be here on the HHH Racing Podcast to talk about the Kentucky Derby. We also have special guests. I don't want to say who. If you followed us on Twitter, you might know. But tomorrow, Tuesday, we have two very special guests. And tomorrow, and then Wednesday, we also have two special guests. And we also have a special guest on Thursday. Tune in. It's going to be an unbelievable week. We can't wait to have you join us. We already have some people right now who are on. We got Penn State Scott. Matt was here early to open the tab. He didn't forget. Matt Miller. Hope to hear your thoughts in the chat. I'm sure we'll hear from Matt Miller. Brad Anderson, BCBC champ. Welcome to Derby Week, fellas. My favorite trio of handicappers. Appreciate that, Brad. Let's go. We got Christine Race. I often log in early, but Matt Miller, this time it wasn't me. Don't want to miss a minute of good information. Derby fever is highly contagious in my area. Thanks for watching, Christine. Nick Feldman's here. What a day. Derby Oaks PP is already out. Big week of getting ready for these races. Some really good undercards. We also have Raymond Cromley is here. Forte with that long stride equals a win. We got a lot of people watching. If you're watching live, please make sure you comment in the live chat. You have to be on YouTube for that. If you're watching on Twitter, you might want to switch over to our YouTube channel. Just type in HHH Racing Podcast into the search bar to do that. And if you're watching this as a replay later this week, either audio or video, please comment down below the video player on YouTube. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Anchor. We have fantastic power picks. Look below the video player for information about our power pick tip sheet. Very inexpensive, very profitable. We have 2 tip sheets or power picks this week. We're sending one out Thursday for the Friday card. We're sending out one Friday for the Saturday card. If you're interested in subscribing to Power Picks, do it now. You should do it before or by Wednesday night to make sure that you can get those Power Picks. If you subscribe Thursday or Friday, there's no guarantee that you will receive our Power Picks. So please make sure you do that. Check below the video player by Wednesday. And then finally, great website, hhhracingpodcast.com, run mainly by our great co-host, Pete Visco. All sorts of information. You can click the tab that says Power Picks for more information specifically about our Power Picks. All right. I think that takes care of everything. Got a lot to discuss. Let's bring on right now our fantastic co-hosts who are in the green room waiting. What a great night we're going to have. Let's bring them on first from the East Coast of Maryland and the author of our fantastic HHH Racing Podcast website, Mr. Pete Visco, and another fan and fellow club member of the Tapit Trice fan club. Let's bring him on from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and journalist for the Saratoga Special, Mr. Paul Halloran. That's not calling a timeout. That's for TT. Right, Paul? How you guys doing tonight?
Oh, it's Derby week. The PPs are out. Remember one thing. We are all going to sleep when we're dead. So there's no need to sleep Derby week.
No, absolutely no time to sleep at all. Pete, I know you're a big fan of watching the post-draw show, aren't you?
Well, I just want to apologize. First of all, you said we're going to talk about the top 10 horses in the post draw. I came on prepared only to talk about the Ali Sheba and the return of Rich Strike and how great he's working. So I apologize, everyone. I'm not going to be prepared to talk about anything else. So, I'll probably be quiet this whole show. But yes, I am. No, so go ahead, Paul.
It's the strangest thing, Pete. I was looking at that race, and I did not realize they changed the conditions of the Ali Sheba to a non-winners of 2 other than.
I mean, wow. It's in the real fine print. You have to,
like
it's
hard
point. It's hard for us to see with our glasses. We need magnifying glasses.
Hey, Pete, I'm looking forward to seeing him running. In fact, I'm going to go out Thursday morning just to see him train.
I can't wait. You got to set the pictures. I want the pictures. I mean, it's going to, you might not even see it. It's like the Flash running across. So you got to watch.
Paul, we got a Pletcher in post 15. It's just not the Pletcher that we wanted.
Howard, what did we talk about last night? That was the number we picked. The first pill out, the very first one is the 15. And it goes to Forte.
Of course.
But that's okay. That's okay.
Paul, you might want to move your camera down a little bit. You're slipping down to the bottom. You're sliding down the bottom of the screen there.
Everything's fine.
Listen, TT could have gotten the 1 hole, Paul, because that was open for a while, and I was getting very nervous. And then the 20 was open, and this freaking we'll talk. This Japanese 9001 shot's going to get the 20 hole. But we're okay with 5, right? I mean, it could be worse. It's not great, but it's okay.
It could be 4, 3, 2, or 1. It could be 4 numbers worse.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to quickly give our thoughts on the post-position draw. If you are sitting here waiting live, or if you're listening as a replay and you want to get right to the top 10, you might want to fast forward about 15 minutes. We're going to talk in detail about the top 10 horses. But the first thing we are going to do is talk about the post-position draw. And guys, I got a little surprise for you because I have Howard Kravitz's morning line odds and value line, and I have just a little I have some bones to pick with Mr. Battaglia and with the morning line. But let's get to it right now, guys. Let me take off the banners right now here, and I'm going to bring on, here is the draw, the post positions for the 149th Kentucky Derby. There it is, guys, up on the screen. I'm going to go full screen. Here's where I wanted to go, guys. First, very quick reactions from both of you, and then we'll talk about winners and losers, and then we'll talk about the odds. But Pete Visco, you'll first. I'm going full screen. Just quick snap take reaction at these post draws.
I mean, when I first saw a couple things that jumped out, obviously poor hit show. I mean, that's never the thing. You don't want to be in the dreaded one hole, especially for a horse who most likely likes to be a little bit closer or at least mid pack at the worst. So you hope he doesn't get shuffled back if you're a fan of his. Obviously, Tapit Trice. I'll leave that one to you guys first, and then I'll give my opinion later. Derma Sotogake was interesting. I mean, I know he's pretty tactical and he's actually been pretty versatile in his races. But if the plan was to send him, then, the 17 isn't the greatest thing in the world, although he does have pretty much nothing but closers in the 4 slots next to him. So he should be able to get away a little bit quickly and sort of gun out if he really wants to. Those were the big ones. And then I'm an Angel of Empire and Forte fan. I really loved where they were. Stay out of trouble, stay on the outside, get a clear run. So those are my big takeaways.
Guys, we're getting some comments in the chat, and I got this from Twitter. There are some mistakes apparently that we're seeing.
Jace's Road is actually 50, and who's the other one? Why am I? Okay, maybe so the other one was actually adjusted already. There were 2. Jace's Road, I think, was 50.
Jace's Road should be 50-1. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yes,
I saw that and I thought that was ridiculous. I was at school, guys. So again, if this is wrong, I apologize. And what is the other one? Does anyone know the other one?
I thought there was another one that also had 15. If anybody knows in the chat, throw it up. There might have been another one that was 15 in the initial announcement, but it was a typo.
Is it Reincarnate should be 15 instead of 50?
No, I don't.
No?
I didn't hear that one. I didn't hear that one come down because that one made absolutely no sense to me. So, I mean, I don't like Reincarnate, but I don't think he should be 50. So,
all right. Paul, your initial snap take thoughts on the post draw.
Well, I think Forte got a great spot. I would love to have had that spot for Tapit Trice. I agree with Pete. I think if you're an Angel of Empire person, you got to like that spot. Otherwise, I'll tell you who I did not think the draw did any favors for, Verifying and 2 fills.
Yep.
I think both want to be forward. And, one thing, how we might not like the fact that our boy's a little further inside than we want, but it's, in my opinion, it's much worse to be down there with a horse who's kind of not necessarily wants to be on the lead, but wants to be forward. And you're going to have to hustle him out of there pretty quickly. So I think the 2 and 3 probably took the worst of it. Practical Move, I don't really like the horse, but perfect spot, I think, for him, for the Santa Anita Derby champ. And I'm happy to hear that Jace's Road is 50 and not 15 because I thought that was just silly. So I'm looking them up right now just to, but So I think really the 2 and 3 kind of took the worst of it, in my opinion.
I was just going to say, sorry, Howard, I didn't mention the 17 is the funny one because we've never had a UAE or, Japanese winner of the Derby. We also have never had a horse win out of the 17 hole. So just another interesting post position fact.
My quick take, and I know we're going to talk about, on Wednesday is our Kentucky Derby show, late pick 5, in detail. I think there's some inside speed here, guys. I do not envision a slow pace. This whole slow pace argument, I don't understand. And I'm not saying that because I have a big future on Tapit Trice, as does Paul. But, I mean, Verifying's got to go. 2 fills is not slow. Confidence Game, by a lot of figs I've seen, guys, might be one of the fastest early in this race. I know people find that hard to believe. Derma Sotogake's got to go from the 17 hole. I mean, I think he was going anyway. I already talked about Rocket Camp, the blinkers on from the 18, Pete and Paul. I think he's going to go. My overall take is there's definitely enough speed that the closers can win. I don't think it's going to be a pace meltdown, but that's my main take. Real quick, Pete, give me 1 or 2 horses winners, 1 or 2 horses losers based on the post draw. Paul, you'll do the same, and then I'll show a sheet with some odds that I want to discuss. Pete,
I go winners, Angel of Empire, Forte, Practical Move are probably probably my 3 winners. And then if I was going to say losers, I would go Hit Show. I'd go Tapit Trice just a bit, and probably Verifying.
Paul, winners and losers?
Well, I think Pete's right on target. My big winners would be Forte and Angel of Empire. And my losers, I think my top 2 losers are going to be Verifying and 2 fills. I mean, I'm not thrilled with the 5 for our guy, but I'd much rather be a horse of his profile there than the 2 and 3.
Yeah, I'm right with you guys. I think the 2 and 3 did not get very good draw. I put Tapit Trice borderline bad draw. I mean, he could have gotten outside. He didn't. And I agree. I mean, Practical Move got a great post, Pete. And Angel of Empire and Forte, I mean, unfortunately selfishly for me, they're very good horses and they got great draws. I mean, so, I think Derma Sotogake is okay. I think it's a little bit wider than they want to be, but I think this horse is better, wider. I also think Mage and Skinner got real nice draws in the 8 and 9 guys. And we're going to talk a lot more detail again about this race as we go throughout the week, but I'm very interested in both of them. And they have real nice draws. There's speed everywhere, guys. And maybe it's not like lightning fast speed, but I think there's enough release speed to make it interesting. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to show, I create a spreadsheet, guys, that I'm going to show. What I'm going to show everyone right now are the actual odds, and I have to change Jace's Road.
No, Jace's Road on the Kentucky Derby website is still 15-1. So
Really?
Yeah.
Well, did they say on the show that he was supposed to be 50?
They said no.
Why
said
are people
15.
saying that that's wrong then?
Well, I think that it's so far off that they think it must be wrong.
No, I thought someone posted that it was a typo, but maybe that was a tweet that wasn't correct. So who knows?
So Racing Down Win said after the draw, word came out on Twitter, but listen, it's Twitter. I don't know.
That's
we'll
where I
have
saw
to do.
it.
I hate to give bad information. Maybe, if it's still 15-1 on the website, it's got to be correct. So I don't know if one of you guys can look into that a little more as we go along here, but I'm just going to assume it's 15 until I hear otherwise, even though I think that's completely hard to believe. Here's what I want to do, guys. Let's take a look at this screen. This is something that I just made up this afternoon. I'd love to hear everyone's opinion on what they think. So this is a spreadsheet I made. This first column here, this MB is Mike Battaglia. The first column are the actual morning line odds. The middle column would be my morning line odds. I want to make this very clear. Morning line odds means what I think the public will make these horses, not what my opinion is. You want my opinion, guys? That's right here, the value line. This third column is my value line. This is what I believe the odds should be at post time. And they're all correct mathematically, guys, just to let you know. Like, these are all viable odds. And this last column is my personal percent chance that I think these horses have to win the race based on this column here. So let's just very quickly go through this. Any thoughts, Pete? Pete, we'll have you go first. Again, what morning line odds do you think are just completely off the radar here? My personal morning line odds would be in the middle, and then my actual value line, what I think the odds should be, are on the right-hand column. And people can laugh. I mean, I'd continue our 250-1. I mean, 50-1 is ridiculous on this horse. Anyway, any quick thoughts, Pete? I'll scroll slowly so you can see your opinions on either what I have or what Mike Battaglia did.
Yeah, I'm trying to look real quick to see if anything really jumps out. I agree with some of the ones you have as sort of the big bombs because, I know they always have to set them relatively low, but in terms of chance of winning, I agree with those. I think King's Barnes is a funny one that came in a little low in the Mike Battaglia line, 12-1. I know he's got a lot of ones there and he looks like he has some talent, but I feel like he's probably closer to what you have him as opposed to that 12. And then if I'm looking, I think maybe I think Derma Sotogake, I could see him actually being lower on the day. So that's somewhere between, I think the morning line might be a little bit high. I agree, probably just based on, just based on history and stuff, I think your 12-1 doesn't sound bad, but I think in terms of what it's going to look like on the day, I think that one's probably might be a touch high as well.
Paul, any thoughts on Mike Battaglia's line? Let me say this, okay? I want to make this real clear. And Paul, I'm assuming you're going to agree. Of all the things in this world, in the horse racing world, that's wrong and things that are right. But in terms of things that are wrong, Mike Battaglia's morning line in the Kentucky Derby, to me, Paul, ranks about 285th in things that we need to fix or be concerned about. But I think it is worth mentioning because this is the most popular race of the year. And when I see like Ray's Cane at 15-1 morning line, I mean, come on. Does he really think that Ray's Cane is going to be 15-1 morning line? That's an embarrassment, Paul. I'm sorry. It's just completely ridiculous.
Well, I think Jason's Road at 15-1 is more ridiculous. And
I agree.
What I thought you were going to say, Howard, though, is I agree with you. It is kind of a big nothing burger. Who cares?
Yeah.
And it is not easy because remember, he's trying to predict what the betting public is going to do. And this is the one day a year that the market is flooded with money from people who do not bet horses the other 364 days a year. So, we can look at a Saturday race at Keeneland with our good friend Nick Tamero, who has 6 first-time starter 2-year-olds, 2 others who have run once, and say, boy, that's a tough line to predict how they're going to bet. But, we know who's betting that race, right? People who know that Wesley Ward wins that race a lot, et cetera, et cetera. So to try to predict what the public is going to do on this day is really a fool's errand. And remember, that's what he is trying to do.
So, guys, I'm getting a lot of response. It looks like Jace's Road is 50. That was a mistake. And I believe Ray's Cane is also 50. This is not the first time. It's not the first time that Churchill has done this, guys. I mean, so
it's only the Kentucky Derby. What's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, so okay, I'm going to assume that that's correct because that would make a lot more sense to me. The Jace is 50 and Ray's Cane, and those are still low in my. I mean, I've got them 150-1 in my personal value line. I mean, if anyone bets these horses at 50-1, I think that's crazy. Now, people would say, "What about last year, Rich?" Again, Haley's Comet, weird, bizarro. The chance that happening twice in a row, very strange. Anything else, guys? Then we're going to go on to the top 10. And you can feel free.
Yeah,
to criticize the last column because that's what I think the horses should be at post time.
Yeah, I'd like to criticize the last column if I could.
Please do.
No, I really think you're off. We talked about it last night. I think you're off base on Disarm. He is training better than anyone, and I'm not saying he's going to win, but he has a much better chance than horses you have at lower odds, in my opinion. My humble opinion.
Give me a horse, Paul, that is I have at lower odds as a better chance than Disarm, just for fun.
Hit Show probably is one.
You mean that Disarm has a better chance than him?
Yeah, you knew what I meant. I misspoke. Yes.
I think he has a better chance than Kings Barnes. I think he has a better chance than Derma Sotogake.
What?
In my opinion. Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Hey, look, you're talking. No one has fallen more for these horses coming over here for this race than me. I've had all of them. Thunder Snow, Snow White, Seven Dwarfs, Crown Pride, Queen Pride, Angel, all of them. Okay. Look if we're going to say the practical move got 2 dream trips, and we're going to discount him, as I think you and I are kind of leaning on doing, Howard. I mean, can we talk about how easy a trip this horse got in the UAE Derby?
Yeah, but okay, we'll talk about it. We're coming up. Yeah. If you agree with Paul, put it in the chat. Who's more likely to win, Disarm or Derma Sotogake? Disarm has not ran one race, including his win at Saratoga. That's good enough to win this race at all. But that's okay. That's the beauty. This is the most difficult handicap race to handicap, guys, of the year, and you get the most varied opinions of any race, Pete, as we do here. As we talk about our top 10 right now, we're going to have widely different opinions just amongst the 3 of us, and we all have Well, I have respect for you too. I don't know about the other way around,
Yeah.
but we've obviously deep dive with these horses all year long, so we have a very educated opinions. Whether they're going to be correct or not, who the hell knows, guys? All right, should we jump in to the top 10?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we're going to go in reverse chronological order. Again, we talked about this last night. If you were not part of our show last night, these are not, I repeat, these are not the three of us on the screen, our opinions of who's going to finish 1 through 10. These are based on the Vegas odds as of right now. Again, this is being filmed on Monday night. These are the pretty up-to-date current Vegas odds, not morning line odds by Battaglia or Churchill Downs. The Vegas odds of the 10 lowest odd horses or most likely winners of the race. The first horse we're going to talk about, P, I'm going to have you go first. This is a horse that just got in. A few days ago, he was on the AE list. To me, this horse is absolutely fascinating. It is Skinner for John Sheriffs, who knows how to win a Kentucky Derby. And this horse is going to be ridden by Juan Hernandez. I believe his first Derby mount. I could be wrong about that. What's your thoughts on Skinner, Pete?
Skinner to me has, up till this point, Skinner to me has been on that, in sort of that third bucket for me, which is more in the trifecta, superfecta range. Not that I don't think but I do think he is a win contender. Like if I had to say there's maybe 10 horses who I think you can make a logical case to win the race, I think he's one of them. I don't personally love him that much. At the Santa Anita Derby, it was nice, but I just thought he should have gone by. And I worry about him not passing and not being ready to pass the horses that he's going to have to pass in this race. So it seems like he's training well. Seems like he's sharp. He's on the improve. It looks like the distance should be no trouble based on his breeding. But for some reason, he just doesn't feel like the horse. I feel like there's horses who run his style better than he does, at least right now. Maybe in the future that'll change, but I feel like I like other closers who are going to be in a similar position that I think are just better than him at this point.
We're going to switch over to the PPs there. Perfect. Paul, your thoughts on Skinner, who, by the way, is about 25-1 in Vegas. And what was he on Battaglia's line? He was 20-1. Paul.
I think I'll be using him, and as Pete says underneath, I have a hard time envisioning a scenario where he wins. Although, if you're playing the numbers, that 99, Santa Anita Derby did come back fast, and he put up a 99. He is a Curlin. John Sheriffs is not a guy who suffers from the dreaded DFS, Derby fever syndrome. He only comes when a horse brings him. So I think those are all positives. Again, you would assume the distance is no issue. It's just a question of how far back is he going to be. I think in this field, he has the potential to be like maybe 15th at the first turn. And, can he make up that much ground?
Paul, you've got Mandarin Hero, who's not in the race, and then, of course, Practical Move. Skinner's been wide. It looked like he might have hung a little bit here in the Santa Anita Derby. I don't know either one of your quick thoughts on the Santa Anita Derby that we just watched.
I mean, that's what I thought, because watching it, because I had doubts about Practical Move holding at 1 1/8, and then Skinner made the move. I mean, he made the move that you're going to probably have to make in the Derby. You can't really complain about being wide. Most likely you're going to be a little bit wide in the Derby. You're not going to get the cleanest of trips if you're coming from the back, and you have to push through that and then go by. And it was a little disappointing to me that he didn't in that race. So maybe he takes a step forward. I saw Nick put a comment in there where Skinner did have the best thorograph of anyone in that race. And it looked like, based on his projection, or I should say progression on his thorograph, it looked like he has a move forward coming. And if he does, that vaults him up. But it's tough for me to look for that in this race.
He's been wide, guys. I am very interested in this horse. In fact, I think this horse is going to finish in front of Practical Move in this race. If in the superfecta that I'll be playing, I might put this horse in the first position along with a bunch of others. If I were playing an ABC pick 5, Paul, which we talked about a lot, this horse would probably be about a B as in boy for me. this horse is very interesting to me, and I would not underestimate John Sheriff's in this situation. He's also got a great post. So I think this horse is really interesting, guys. I'm curious to see what Skinner does. Let's go to the horse that's right next door. And we had a big debate about who ran a better race in the Florida Derby between this horse and the probable favorite in the Kentucky Derby. And Paul, we're going to have you talk about this horse that's trained by Gustavo Delgado, who's had some horses in the Derby, and that is the very interesting Mage.
And I played Mage in the Florida Derby, and I was feeling pretty good in the stretch. I think Louis did what he had to do. The horse, I did when I played him and saw that he was a last early, dead last. I mean, I'm playing him to be somewhat forward, so I thought he was out of it. So I think Louis did what he had to do. Remember, in addition to trying to win that race, they obviously needed points like everyone else. And just look at he breaks second to last.
Yeah, he's the 4. That's not usually what he does. Forte is the 11. I'll fast forward to the mid backstretch. We can see the big. Here's Mage, I think
last.
Right here, right, guys?
Yeah,
last.
Dead last.
And here's
DFL.
Forte. I'll let it run through. It's worth watching again, and we can talk about it because not everyone probably might remember this race exactly. Go ahead, Paul. I'll let you take it through.
Yeah, Louis is, and remember, Louis looking at Forte right in front of him. So he really has no choice. He's not going to let Forte go off by himself. So, I think he did exactly what he needed to do. He was tracking Forte. He had to take the wide trip here, and he is going to be fairly wide on this turn, although Irad really thinks he is the best horse because he says, screw this, I'm going to go even wider. But, right here, I'm liking my chances at 9-2 with Mage, and I just think he gets a little late. And, hey, this is the Kentucky Derby favorite who's going to come and grab him right before the wire. So I think if you're looking for horses to advance off this race, as far as figure-wise, I think there's a chance of Mage advancing by more of a number than Forte.
And Pete, it is fair to say that Forte was geared down in the last few strides. And of course, the Derby's another 1/8 of a mile. So we should take both those things in consideration. I know, Pete, you were a big fan of Forte in this race in terms of the trip. You disagreed with Paul and myself. You thought Forte had the worst of it. What's your thoughts on Mage in the Derby? He gets a nice post. And the other thing, Paul, that was only his 3rd lifetime start. Right. That was his 3rd lifetime start. That's usually a negative, though, Pete, in this kind of race where he's only got 3 lifetime starts.
Yeah, it's good. It usually takes a little bit more than that, unless you're sort of nearer to the top of the crop. So it's like if you're just a superstar, say, Justify, and you sort of tower over the group, then maybe that lack of seasoning doesn't hurt you as much. But with Mage, I think he's still figuring it out. We've seen that the break hasn't always been as good. He's still learning how to do that. If you break bad in the Derby, it's tough. And if if that's not what you want to do, it could take everybody out of their game, including the jockeys in some case. I don't care how experienced you are. And so I thought Forte was better. I thought he blew by him. I thought he beat him very comfortably. I thought Mage got a little leg weary. I don't necessarily love Good Magic as a 1.25 miles, but I had this horse actually, though, on sort of the B line in terms of, hey, if somebody's going to win, if he can get a good trip. I think he doesn't want to be in the back again. I don't want him closing from way too far back. But if he breaks well, if he can be tactical, if he could sit up close, I think he's got a shot, especially if he's chasing horses that he's better than talent-wise. Then at least I think he can make a move and be in contention in the lane.
Vegas has him around 20. Mike Battaglia has him at 15. Guys, if he can break, and I don't know what happened in the Florida Derby, if he can break, I think he's interesting. I'm a little worried about the distance, but in terms of talent, he reminds me a bit of Teba. And don't be like, what? This is a talented horse, guys. This is a very talented horse. I don't know if he can put it together. I agree with you, Pete. He'd be like a B as in boy and an ABC. I would not be shocked if he wins this race. I don't expect it, but I think he could definitely finish the top 3. And I don't want to keep rehashing the Florida Derby. But I agree with Paul. I thought he ran a better race than Forte based on the circumstances. But it was self-inflicted, Pete, because it was Mage's fault that he didn't break. So anyway, we're not going to go back and debate the Florida Derby. This is a very talented horse. We agree that if he can take a step forward and put it together, I think he's possible to win this whole damn thing. He's interesting. Let's go to number 8. Paul and I have some confidence of some horses, but do we have confidence in Confidence Game? This is a very interesting horse. And Paul, I know you watched the morning show quite a bit, and if you've heard heard from Keith DeSormo and James Graham, the jockey, they are very high on Confidence Game. Why don't you talk first, Paul, about Confidence Game, who in Vegas is somewhere around 12 to 22, and of course you see on the screen is 20-1 morning line by Mike Battaglia.
Well, I'm going to be wrong if this horse comes anywhere near to winning. I know that it's a different time, and the curse of Apollo was broken, although it's still like 1 for 71 or whatever. And trainers run their horses less frequently, but I think there's a difference between running a 4 or 5 year old. Let's even say Flightline last year into the Breeders' Cup, or Cody's Wish into the Dirt Mile off the Forgo, a 4-year-old, than running a 3-year-old in the most difficult race in the world off 70 days. I think there is no way this horse is winning this race off a 70-day layoff. So there.
I mentioned the pace scenario, and for those of you that are not familiar, and again, Pete and Paul, we're going to have a lot of people that have not seen this show, the HHH Racing podcast before, so I just want to be clear. For people who are not familiar with some of the colors that you see on the screen, if you're watching this on video, live, or as a replay, those are Timeform US numbers, those red and blue numbers, and red means fast races. Those are fast coded races. Blue means slow. So this horse has been up close, Paul and Pete, into pretty fast paces. He's got the 4. He's fresh. He just had a 111 and 1, I think, Saturday morning in a workout. He's fresh. I think they have to use him early, right, Pete? I expect this horse to be in the first flight or very near it.
I agree. No, I agree. I think that's where he'll most likely be. I think he'll be, especially because again, there isn't lightning fast speed in this race. There's no, pure speed front runners. So I think this one has shown, and I think a couple of I know Nick has talked about this, and a couple of our commenters have talked about it. Like, just because a horse looks like they get the lead sometimes doesn't make them fast. It just means they were faster in that race, or they had the lead in that race. This horse looks to be naturally pretty fast.
Yeah.
So I think this horse will be close. And again, I think you might have said it, wouldn't shock you if he sort of inherits the lead for a little bit, even if it's not, start to finish all the way around. It wouldn't shock me just because he's a little bit faster than some of the other speed and has the post to necessarily where he's going to have to get out and maybe do it.
Here's my problem with this horse, Paul. I'd like to believe. I think Keith DeSormo is a very underrated horseman, by the way. I think he's very good.
He's good.
And James Graham is a very solid veteran jockey who I've seen ride for 20 years when he was at Arlington. So it's not the connections that bother me, but the layoff is a little bit of a concern. It was planned. Let's just make this clear. There was no injury. It was planned. They just thought the horse would be good with some more time. My main concern, guys, his best number was number 1 on the slop. And number 2, that Rebel. I mean, he beat Red Route 1, who, I'm sorry, just doesn't do much for me. Another good candidate to win the Iowa Derby.
Whoa, easy on Red.
Sorry, Paul. I know you're a big fan. But he barely won last.
You're right about the Rebel, though.
And Reincarnate, who you admit is not a very good horse. So at least in your opinion. So who did he beat? I mean, we'll see. I think his top for me is like 3rd or 4th. I just don't see him in the top 2. I think something weird would have to happen. He's 12, about 15, 20 to 1 in Vegas. We'll have to see. Any final thoughts? Then we're going to move on, guys. About
no, I was just going to say to your point about if you look at his Tomlinson, he's got a 455 Tomlinson rating. So when you look at that, you say maybe he did just love the slop and he did get a pretty good trip.
Ride? The candy rides.
Yeah. Yep. And he got a pretty good trip into a very hot pace against the field that didn't turn out to be all that great. So that was always my concern with him. And then, yeah, the layoff seems to be problematic. I still could think it wouldn't shock me if he somehow hit the bottom, but I mean, if he won, it would be he would be tough to come up with, I think, on the win end, unless you just love the way he looks this week, which a lot of people do. So I could see him taking some money too.
Very quick, I just want to promote a few things. We have a lot of people watching. We really appreciate all the viewership. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. If you've not done so, smash that like button, hit the notification bell. You can listen to our shows on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. We've got tremendous tip sheet called Power Picks, one of the most inexpensive and profitable in the country, a proven historic $2.59 ROI, which is completely accurate. We're very transparent. We also have a great website that my good friend right there, Pete Visco, is in charge of and does a great job. Please check that out, hhhracingpodcast.com. All right, guys, let's go to a horse that I think is pretty people have strong opinions. I have a very strong opinion on this horse, and it's not a positive one. This is one of the 3 Pletcher entries. This is the horse that's going to break from the 6 hole. Pete, I'm going to have you go first. Kings Barnes has done absolutely nothing wrong. 3 for 3, over 650,000, romped in Louisiana Derby. I know some people might be thinking, Howard, why don't you like Kings Barnes? I'll talk third about Kings Barnes. Pete, your dime, your dance floor, sir, as they like to say.
Oh.
What do you think, Pete?
Okay. Yeah, you cut out for a second, so I wasn't sure if you were handing it over. That's okay.
I was.
So I see Nick loves King Barnes in the chat there. So I think the big question with King Barnes, obviously, that everyone has, aside from lack of experience. I mean, the Louisiana Derby, he's on his 3rd start. He's only run this year. He doesn't have that 2-year-old foundation. In that Louisiana Derby, he ran basically one of the slowest Derby prep races and maybe the history of Derby prep races. So he just coasted on the lead. Now, I think if you want to play devil's advocate to that, it's like, did he just do what the best move was for that race and just back it down? Although if you listen to some of Paul and I referenced one of the In the Money Media podcasts this week that had Paul Matisse and Sean Borman on, and they were talking about their own figures. And the one thing they talked about with this horse was, yeah, he went slow, so he won comfortably, but he didn't come home with a nice late pace figure. So if that concerns you, that's what the thing is. But I don't know if you could just look at it and say he got an easy trip. He got the trip that won the race, and he got the trip that was the best move for that race. I don't personally love him as a horse on top, but I would have him as a potential winner if everything went right. Now in the Derby, almost nothing goes right. So I think it's going to be tough for him, but he's talented and maybe he's just really good and hasn't really peaked yet. And this is when he's going to peak. You just don't know yet.
Paul, your thoughts on Kings Barnes, undefeated, 3 for 3.
Well, I loved him in the Louisiana Derby, so he owes me nothing.
Yes, you did.
I think it's a big ask, although I harkened back to an old-time basketball referee named Edgar Cartano, who I spent Florida Derby Day with in an OTB. Howard, you'll appreciate it.
Beautiful.
We were at IBO convention, which is the basketball officials group, and we left the life member luncheon to go. We were actually at a high-life fronton betting horses. Anyway, it was Barbaro's year, and I didn't like him in the race. This is the prep race.
Can I interrupt you with Nick Feldman's comment? He said, we did have Pletcher on. Paul and I interviewed Todd Pletcher. I don't have the number, but those of you that are interested, you can go back several episodes.
Yeah, I remember
we interviewed Todd Pletcher in January, and he did like Kings Barnes even then. So check out our interview with Todd Pletcher, myself and Paul, as Nick Feldman mentioned. Go ahead, Paul.
Anyway, so this old-timer Edgar, as Barbaro was undefeated, says to me, hey, kid, they ain't beat him yet. What makes you think they're going to beat him this time? So ever since then, any horse who's undefeated is at least a C on my ticket. I think this horse is probably a more likely winner of a 3-year-old race down the line. However, a lot of smart people think he's got a good chance. So as I say, he's a C for me right now in my ABC. He's one of the horses I believe can win. could become a B by race day, but right now he's a C.
By the way,
Our good friend Matt Miller.
224, Howard, was the Pletcher for anyone looking. Episode 224.
Episode 224. Thank you, Pete. Good friend Matt Miller, BC champ 2021. Great guy, excellent, one of the best contest players in the world. Said this is the kind of horse, talking about Kingsbarns, in Matt's opinion, that wins the race and makes sense once you already know that he won. He's done nothing wrong. Impossible to fully toss him here, in Matt's opinion. He is, guys, about 12, 15 to 1 in Vegas. And again, here's the morning lines, 12 to 1 by Mike Battaglia. But Howard, I have him at what? 30 to 1. So here's my thoughts, guys. Sorry, I didn't want to do that. I want to take that off the screen. Here's my thought. Obviously, I love Todd Pletcher. I love the connections. I like the horse. I talked about this last night. He has gotten the last 2 trips, dream trips. The Tampa Bay allowance race, he faced nothing. He was on the inside, came up the inside, and did it as easily as possible. I know, Pete, he can't control who he faced. I get it. But he saved ground the whole way. The Louisiana Derby was somewhat embarrassing with the pace that he got. He didn't come home lightning fast, as you said, Pete. And again, Disarm was second, and I don't like Disarm. So the Louisiana Derby was extremely bad. Louisiana Derby this year. He's gotten dream trip after dream trip. He is not going to be up. This whole, he might be on the lead. There is no freaking way this horse is on the lead. I would be absolutely shocked. And here's the other thing. He's got Tapit Trice to his left. I'm not saying he's not going to send, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. If he decides to be aggressive, and he's not going to cut off Tapit Trice, that's for sure. So I don't know. I'm very interested to see what he does. I've got him at best like 5th or 6th. I just don't see it. This is too much too soon. Last thing I'll say, Pete and Paul, you can comment. It took him a long time to decide who the rider was. So my vibe with Pletcher is, although he likes the horse, this is his 3rd string. It's just the vibe I get.
I could see that. I could see it, but it's a pretty good 3rd string to have. You still have an undefeated horse who's pretty talented, who costs a lot of money. He's got Tapit on the dam side. He's got Uncle Mo on the top. So he's got some stuff going for him. And again, I think it could be a little bit too much too soon. But before the Louisiana Derby, and I was with you, Paul, I had him in the Louisiana Derby as well, with the expectation that I like that he's sort of tactical. And I looked at him as a horse that has the right running style for the Derby, quick enough to get out, but doesn't need the lead. It's just hard to know if that's going to happen in a race with 20 horses when you're only on your 4th race and you haven't really faced a ton of adversity against good quality horses. But for me, he's sort of straddling the BC line if we're looking at it from an ABC grid. So I don't want to leave him off. I don't want to lose a horizontal if he wins. So that's where I sort of have him. I don't have him in my top group of top contenders, but sort of in that jumble right below.
Okay. Let's go on to the next horse, guys. Now this horse, as a fan of Tapit Trice, this next horse scares the living crap out of me. And Pete Visco, we have to let you go first because I don't want to tease people for our Wednesday show when we're actually publicly picking our top choice. But I know you are, and rightly so, a huge fan of Brad Cox's probably best possibility to win the Derby this year. A Pennsylvania bred who's done absolutely nothing wrong. 5 for 6 in the money, 4 wins, and that is the number, I believe, 14 horse, Angel of Empire. Pete, fire away, because I think this is one of the horses you really like.
Yeah, no, I really do. And we won't step on Wednesday, but this is definitely one that's in my top tier. He's a top line, definite winning potential horse for me. I love that Pratt picked him. I love having him back on, especially since I thought he rode him so well last time. The one thing with him that I really like too, well, 2 things. Me, I say it to death on this show. I love an improving horse. And he's improving incrementally. So he didn't make like that one jump from, and again, Bayer isn't the end all be all, but it's the barometer we can use, but it's the same in time form. He hasn't made like he ran a 80 and then he ran a 96. And you're like, well, where the hell did that come from? This horse has incrementally gotten better. I like that and in his 2 best races have come once they stretched him out. It looks like the distance is his friend. He gets powerful. Even in his works, you've seen it. His gallop outs have been really strong.
Very good.
He seems to get more and more powerful as they go longer. And he's not a deep closer. He comes from the back. He came from 9th, 2 back in the Risen Star, but he can work himself a trip to where I feel like he runs that race where he could be in 3rd or 4th when they hit the top of the lane with a lot more kick if he's chasing horses who are going to start sucking wind in that last 1/8 of a mile, 16th of a mile. So I love this horse. I hope he shows up. I hope he runs his race. I hope he gets a solid trip. And I love the fact that hopefully he's around that 8-1, whatever price he's sitting at. I hope he's in that general vicinity.
Yeah, he's got about 10-1 in Vegas, and if Mike Battaglia had him at
I think 8, right?
at 8-1. I think he could go off lower than that personally. Pete, he was mid-pack in the RSI Derby and blew by the field. Again, it was not the best field. We just talked about it, but this to me is one of the more likely winners of this race. If I had to, if someone gave me $1 million right now and said pick the winner, I might go with this horse. I'll wait till Wednesday for my final decision. It's also a great post, Paul. He's been galloping out great. People brought up Pratt, Paul, in the last, in the chat. Pratt did ride Kingsbarns last time. I suppose he had a choice. He's no dummy. Pratt knows how to ride this Kentucky Derby, and he's chosen Angel of Empire. That has to give fans of Angel of Empire a lot of confidence, Paul.
Yes, and he has recently been promoted to the A line on my ABC grid, so I'm sure he's yeah, he's my 3rd A. I was back and forth, and the draw did it for me today. The way he's going to run, he should be able to stay out of trouble. You're right, Howard. Pratt did decide, and he decided relatively quickly that, and as I think we talked about it on the show one night, this is where I thought he would land. That Arkansas Derby, unlike the Rebel, which was a terrible prep race, the Arkansas Derby, in my opinion, I'm going to pull it up right now, was a very good race. You had King Russell, who was on the AEs for this race, Reincarnate, who's in the race, Rocky Can, who's in the race, Red Route 1, who's going to the Preakness, Bourbon Bash, who's not the worst horse in the world, finished last. I think this horse is a major contender. I agree with my friend Pete.
He's right. Now, he did get a dream trip. I mean, he had no one in front of him. He just swept around everyone. He got a great trip, but the way he did it, again, the visual here, I know he only got a 94. So people might argue this was this horse is a little bit slow. He's right here, but he does it so damn professionally. And I love the connections. And Brad Cox he switches lead on cue and just explodes right here. And he's just always looked like a nice horse. I love the breeding. By the way, the dam side, Paul, he's by a 2 Honor and Serve mare, who was a real nice horse that ran on the East Coast. I mean, he's doing it so damn easily. This is just, I don't think we have much more to add. I have him 5-1 in my own personal morning line. Like in my chances to win, I think he could be or should be around 5-1. I don't think he's going to be that, but do you think he's that good? I mean, could he, in your guys' mind, is he possibly the second most likely winner of this race after Forte? Because he is for me.
No.
No. How are you going to, Paul's going to say Tapit Trice. He's probably, actually, it's Tapit Trice, then Forte, right, Paul? Potentially?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Heriberto Suero disagrees. He's got Angel of Empire. What's up, Heriberto? Thanks for joining the show. John Moeller, Angel of Empire. Look, I think he's Michael Osen. He's got probably a B, but maybe an A. If anyone picks Angel of Empire, I got no problem with it. Go ahead. We're going to move on, Pete, after your comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say one quick thing, though. It's funny because I've been looking for who's the horse that I'm going to use. If I want to do just one horse in like the first, second, third spot for a big triple and sort of circulate him around, I was trying to think of who that would be. And as much as I love Angel of Empire, he scares me a bit because he's the kind of horse I always like and who always disappoints me and doesn't make the forward move that I want. So I just think back to my Derby history and I'm like, is this even though I think I might like him to win, is he the one that I want to rely on to hit the board out of all the other horses? And that's something I've been struggling with. If I'm going to do that bet where I'm just going to put somebody in the first spot, second spot, third spot, and just surround them with a bunch of other horses and hope
I
for
think
some
he'd be a
mayhem.
great try or super key. But for those people that don't like Tapit Trice, now if you want to argue Angel of Empire is more professional, I'm not going to argue with people, Pete. But doesn't Angel of Empire also have to go around a lot of horses and work out a trip too? I mean, it's not like, he's a closer. I mean, maybe more mid pack, but he's got a lot of horses to pass too. He's not exactly tactical, so I don't know. Everyone's got to work out some kind of trip to win this race. Guys, we're in the top 5. Let's go to the top 5 horses again by Vegas odds. These are not our personal top 5, and this next horse I am against completely. I'll just flat out say it. And he's going to take a lot of money. That's right, Paul. Listen, I would take some stands, buddy. You know me. Paul, I'll let you go first, and you can poo-poo my initial thought.
I hope say, whoever he is, I hope I like him, Pete.
All right, well,
so too, Paul.
Let's go. There he is, Paul. Verifying did not get a great draw. I don't think he got the 2-hole. Listen, he ran a big race last time, or did he? That I'm going to debate that a little bit against Tapit Trice. Got a career buyer 99. This is by Justify out of a Repent mare. So the downside definitely has got distance. We've talked a lot on this show. Let's go full screen with all of us. Pete, real quick, you've talked about Justify and his sires a lot in the show. Can you just tell people very quickly, this is not your opinion, it's actually proven fact up to this point?
Yeah, I didn't look at the number yet to see if it's any different, but I know on last time we watched Verifying, the Justify horses were 1 for 20 something, going beyond a mile and a 16th. And again, people will say, well, look, he went a mile and an eighth and he almost held by a neck. But I'm assuming you're going to talk about those circumstances and why that may have happened. But the Justifies just up until this point haven't had success going beyond. So if you look, though, at, even if you look and you say, routing, they're not that bad. But if you really dig in and you say, yeah, routing includes a mile. They're very good at a mile. They're even decent at a mile and a 16th. But beyond that, they start struggling a bit.
I will say I saw Justify in person, one of the most impressive sires I have ever seen. He is absolutely gorgeous and huge, and just what a beautiful horse. I saw him at Coolmore. He was awesome. But anyway, Paul, Verifying, this is the Half to Midnight Bisu, correct? I'm pretty sure this is the one. Paul, your thoughts on Verifying?
Yeah, Pete, just to Justify progeny up to date, all dirt routes. So that does include the miles and the mile and the 16th, 4 for 65.
Yeah, and if you dig in, it gets it even gets a little worse. Can you repeat that,
Paul, one more time for everyone?
Yeah, Justified progeny. I think this is the 5-year sample, but of course, Justify couldn't be any longer than that with them. 4 for 65 dirt routes.
Okay. By the way, nice shirt, Paul. By the way, just want to mention because you stood up a little bit.
My picture's on it.
Other than the breeding, what's your thought here?
I think that if this horse had a different post position, in my opinion, he might have been the second or third most likely winner. I can't sit here and tell you how good I think Tapit Trice is and not like this horse. That was it was one of the best prep races, if not the best. And this horse was home, and it took a monster horse to beat him. And I don't like the post, but he was going to be a B anyway for me. He's still a solid B, and I have no issue with anyone who thinks this horse can win this race.
Pete, I don't want to I'll wait to give my opinion, but this is the Bluegrass. Here's Verifying going by a no-hoper 86-1 shot and gets caught by Tapit Trice at the wire. Well, actually,
but look at Verifying. He's not asking him at all. And Tapit Trice has been under a ride for the typical Louis Saez, about 3/16 of a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the Verifying ran fantastic, and I think he held strong. He did get pretty much a perfect trip. He got a pace that wasn't, he didn't get an overly hot pace that he was chasing. It was actually pretty moderate, I thought. So, in the end, though, you tell me, unless the trips are just really, really bad in discrepancy with each other, how does Tapit Trice or a horse like that not run him down going an extra an extra eighth of a mile. That's what I don't get. So that's where I struggle with. Now, if he kicks away and something crazy happens and all the closers are stuck behind some walls and nobody can get to him, sure, he could maybe win the race. But I just don't think he's holding off horses like Tapit Trice, Angel of Empire, Forte, whichever feed has crapped out a bit.
Hello, everyone there?
Oh, now you're
Yeah,
back.
we
Yeah,
lost
the
you for a minute.
video feed crapped out for
We
a
have
bit.
so many
Now
people
we're all
watching the
back.
show right now. Just
We're breaking the internet,
We're
basically.
breaking-
We're just breaking
sorry, everyone.
YouTube
We're
and
breaking. That's the
internet.
first. Literally, what is this? 253 shows. I'm not sure that's really happened before. We are breaking the internet. Sorry, everyone. Anyway, Pete, you were just explaining that. How can he win the Derby if he couldn't? If Tapit Trice couldn't, if he couldn't hold off Tapit Trice.
I mean, and I just think, and I saw that Nick said verifying galloped out even with Tapit Trice, and okay, that's fine. And I think he ran great. I just think he's going to get past. And if you're picking a horse to win, I just think somebody's going to beat him. I'm not sure who it is, but I could see verifying getting the trip, getting first run, if he could break from that 2-hole and maybe being in contention for the 3rd spot, 4th spot, something like that.
Guys, I've got him at 25-1 in my own line. That is not a misprint. Pete, I agree with you fully here in this situation. I want someone to tell me that last race. Now, look, he got a 99. He ran great. No doubt about it. He was tracking a perfect position off of an 86-1 shot. Of course, he went by that horse easily. Tapit Trice had a much more difficult trip. He had to angle out 4 wide. It wasn't the fastest pace. He cannot hold off Tapit Trice going 1 mile and 1/8. In what scenario, with a lot more speed from the 2-hole, is this horse going to win this race? I think he's going to be way over bet. I love the horse, guys. I think he's a real nice horse. I hate the spot. I don't think he's 1.25 mile horse. There's a lot more speed in this race. He's going to be down inside. I think verifying is the kind of horse, guys, that has a great chance at the top of the stretch to hear his name in front or like right behind the leaders and maybe in front even at the 8th pole, like mid-stretch. And then he's going to get passed by 4 or 5 horses. He's a great candidate to me to finish like 4th, 5th, or 6th. I just don't see it, guys. That's just
Sounds
my opinion.
right. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think he could hold for higher than that, but
what, Paul? Come on. Listen, I know he was right there with our buddy, but I mean, circumstances are going to be completely different in this race, Paul. Completely different.
Right, but if Tapit Trice might not be right on his tail in this.
Well, could it be Angel of Empire? Like, I mean, I can name a lot of horses that could be right on his tail that are better.
Yeah, but a lot of horses aren't the best 3-year-old in the crop.
Practical Move's a better horse to me than Verifying. That's just my opinion. I'm trying to think of horses that'll be right around there. I don't know. I think Mage is more talented. I don't know if he's good enough, but I don't know. I'm against Verifying on the win end for sure. Maybe second, but I am more 3rd or 4th. It's just my opinion, guys. I could be wrong. We will wait. We will wait and see. Let's move on. And again, we didn't. Everyone stayed with us. I'm glad that was just a. I think we're literally breaking the internet. We got so many people watching. So let's go on to the horse I just mentioned, guys. Now, I have a pretty strong opinion on this horse too. And I don't have, like, some horses I'm not sure about. I feel pretty strongly about this horse. And the next horse, Pete, you're going to go first, is a horse from California for Tim Yakteen. He's talented. He's been fantastic. 7 for 7 lifetime in the money. Practical Move, I think fair to say the best West Coast hope this year. Talk about Practical Move, Pete, who is about 12-1 in Vegas. I'll bring it up again. Breaking from the 10-hole, 10-1 morning line, according to Mike Battaglia for Churchill.
Yeah, I mean, this horse does nothing wrong, so you can't fault him on how he runs his race. I know we like to say, hey, in his last 3 races, he's pretty much gotten perfect rail trips where he was able to just sit off and then make his move, and didn't have much to do, didn't have to navigate anything too strong, just sort of overtook horses and actually just was able to cruise to a win. In the last one, he didn't cruise though. In the last one, he made his move. He got the perfect trip. and he was almost run down. And the problem was whether you think he was strong enough to hold these horses off, or Mandarin Hero happened to get not the best trip in the world and got out a little late, and Skinner maybe didn't get the best ride and hung a little bit. Maybe that's the reason. And if you're talking about another horse who I think, I'm the same with you, what you said with Verifying. I think you can hear Practical Move down the lane. If you have him, you're going to be cheering because he's going to be on the lead or at some point. And again, I just think the distance is going to get to him. He's a practical joke, not necessarily made for the 1.25 miles. He was ready to get past, I thought, in this race. I just thought the horses behind him didn't do it. And I assume they did in the gallop. I don't know if you remember now, but I just think
didn't you sort of want him to draw off it? Didn't you sort of want him to draw off if you're a huge fan of this horse? To me, I don't know.
I mean, with the trip he got, you would assume, and I guess the thought would be, I mean, again, is the thought going to be that he holds off multiple closers again if they can get to him? So if he doesn't kick away and if it's not clean and everybody else is hung up and he can kick away, then sure, maybe. We've seen strange things happen, but I just feel like he's another one that's going to get run down at some point. But I think he has a good enough tactical ability to put himself in position to where he loses and could finish second, third, fourth easily, because I think he just maybe, one horse runs him down, two horses run him down, and that's about it.
Paul, here he is in San Felipe. This is not the same race we just watched. I mean, does this look familiar? Just sitting on the inside. He's going to get through on the inside. This is a nice horse, but boys, he got in great trip after great trip. But maybe obviously he makes his own trip, but still, he's not going to get this kind of trip in the Derby. Some kind of ground-saving inside trip seems very unlikely to me.
It's nice how polite the jockeys are out there. Mr. Cordero. Mr. Cordero would have never made it out there because if he's on this 7, the 3 is not getting this trip.
Look at this hole.
I mean, they gave him 4 paths.
Get through that hole.
Yeah, but again, the race.
Here's Skinner, by the way, on the outside. Skinner right here, just sort of green and coming on late.
Yeah, the more I watch those replays, Howard, you could be as interested as you want in Skinner. I think he's got a shot to hit the board. That's his ceiling in this race. Okay. But remember, those 2 races, Howard, do come back at 100 buyer, and no one else has put 200 buyers back to back. And, we use these numbers for a reason. One thing that people have not talked about, but it is a factor, first time out of California, and this is a different surface. Not every horse takes to it. Now, he's been on it a couple of days, hasn't really done anything of note yet. I did not see him this morning. I know yesterday morning he just jogged the wrong way. He just got off the plane on Saturday. But that is certainly a factor with this horse. I would have to check Vasquez. Is it his first Derby mount? I'm guessing it is.
No, that's practical. Is that who's riding him? I'm sorry, you're right. Yep, you're right.
That's okay. Don't apologize.
I think you're right. I mean, this is not San Anita, which is a speed favoring. Even the Los Al win. I mean, that Los Al's tends to be speed favoring. I just, if you didn't see his trips, Paul and Pete, and you just looked at the numbers, you're like, this is the Derby favorite, or right there, right? But boy, he's just gotten great trip after great trip. I'm not sure about the breeding. He's never raced outside of California. This horse I don't think he can win personally. I don't think he's going to win. He could absolutely finish in the top few. He also could finish 10th or 12th, Paul, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think he'll get bet if as people have said all week, if the trainer were Bob Baffert with those running lines, he'd probably be the favorite. Or a second choice. But I do think he's going to get bet below the 10-1 morning line. And that's Aknaughty, but the sire of Aknaughty is one of my favorite horses of all time. Go back and watch a Fleet Alex's Preakness if you want to watch one of probably the 5 most impressive performances of all time, considering he went to his knees in a Triple Crown race and got up and won. But, yeah, I mean, again, would it shock me if this horse won the Kentucky Derby? No. Would it surprise me? Yes. Am I betting him to win the race? No. He'll be a B on my ABC grid because I kind of think that, and I'll be honest with you, he vacillated between a B and a C. So he's a B right now. He's not going to A. We'll see how he looks this week.
I've got to write down the word vacillated from our words. Let's see, vacillated. That's a good word.
That's why he's that's why he's an Eclipse Award nominee. My friend
Paul, I
Paul
agree
down
with
there.
everything you said right there. He's a really nice horse. I just don't know about the distance and the spot. But if he wins, it wouldn't shock me. I'm not expecting it to happen. Let's move on, guys, from Practical Move, and let's go to our top three. This is a horse that Paul just does not like. He always claims that I don't like Italians. Maybe Paul just doesn't like the Japanese. I don't know. But this horse is super talented. There's going to be a lot of people going both ways on this horse. Paul, I'll let you go first with Derma Sotogake coming in from Japanese connections, but his race in the Middle East. One as impressive as you can be, albeit on an uncontested lead, but a very fast time. And by the way, before I forget, if you're a sheet player, Practical Move apparently has gotten about 3s or 4s in the last 2 races. Tapit Trice got a 1 in the Bluegrass, for those of you that are sheet players. So the sheet numbers, guys, has Practical Move a little bit slower, which makes sense because he's been getting inside trips and the sheet numbers take into account ground loss. So I just want to throw that out there. But Derma Sotogake, Paul, you're against him. I don't think anyone can deny his talent. I guess you just think this is a tough spot, or just you don't think he's going to get the lead or whatever.
Well, I don't know what he's beaten. I mean, we're talking about Continua being 10,000 to 1 in this race. And, he beats him twice in the last 4 races. Now, I don't know. I probably should do some research. I don't know how good Dora Arede is, or Commissioner King, who beat him in the Saudi Cup. Having a meltdown is a U.S. horse, so we do know that horse is a decent horse who beat him in the Saudi Cup. Hey, look, could he go wire to wire? I guess. Again, I've fallen for these horses. I think Lemaire is a very good jockey. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night to play him in a 20-horse dirt race in the United States. So that's another thing.
Does last year have anything to do with it, Paul?
Yeah. So again, I fully understand anyone who wants to bet this horse, but you're going to have to understand why it's not going to be me.
Pete, let's talk about last year, okay? Christophe Lemaire was on Crown Pride. They went the fastest pace in the history of the Kentucky Derby. Is it possible there's going to be an overcorrection by Lemaire? Is it possible that he's not going to send out there and not help create a fast pace? Or do you think this horse is just that talented that Lemaire knows he's got to go and at least put him somewhat into the game? I think that's a huge factor in this pace situation, is what Derma Sotogake does from the outside, along with maybe Rocket Can, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Lemaire is experienced enough, though, where you would hope he can make that decision based on, the horse that he has under him this time, not necessarily. I mean, he's been around the block. He's been all over the world. He's been here in races. I think this is a horse who's been tactical. He wasn't a speed horse necessarily. The last race, Paul mentioned it earlier, he sort of inherited the lead in a race that wound up just being sort of a merry-go-round, if I remember correctly. So if he inherit the lead and you're the best horse in the race, which he seemed to be, and if you're pretty fast, I mean, we've heard from, I've heard on other podcasts or wherever where that UAE Derby got 103 potentially from a buyer standpoint. You see the time form, a 109, which isn't super high, but again, you don't know how the correlation always is. So the sheets love this horse. From what I understand, he had the best thoroughgraph number out of all. The UAE Derby was the best thoroughgraph number out of all the races, all the Derby prep races. So
he was running faster fractions, Pete, in that race than the Dubai World Cup. I mean,
yes. Yep.
So he ran in that race. Now you could say he was on the lead, whatever, but not only that, Pete, if I may just jump in.
No, please jump in.
This is a dirt horse. Okay, for those of you who are like, well, Mendelssohn was a turf horse who never really raced in this kind of scenario. Thunder Snow, who did a bucking bronco act, had never been in that situation. This is a dirt horse, guys. You go back and look at his earlier races, and you can watch him on YouTube. He was closing from behind, taking, it's like really sandy, a lot of kickback in those races in Japan. This is a professional, serious horse who's been all over the world. Forget about what you saw on Saturday. I know he was weird. They broke him from the gate, and then he was acting all goofy. That personally doesn't bother me at all. This is the first Japanese horse that I think has a serious shot to win this race, Pete, especially because, again, no one really blows me away in the field.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I have him on my A line, so for me,
I do
he's
too.
he's a threat. But again, you're putting it, you're doing a little bit based on faith because you're hoping that all of that is the case. But again, this isn't the most talented. Like, numbers haven't blown you away, performances haven't blown you away. Every horse we say, well, he didn't beat anybody in this race. None of the races turned up to be really that strong. If you go past maybe the top two, maybe the top three in most of these Derby preps, a lot of them have come up weak. So in a year where there's not like a super standout, there's not someone who's dominant based on the numbers. Why can't a horse who, they train this horse, they train him to go, they work their horses, the Japanese, when they train their horses, and they've been dominating races all over the world. One of these times they're going to do it in the Kentucky Derby, and this horse looks like he's talented enough. And again, he's not a straight to the lead. The 17 hole is a little concerning because what does he do? Does he have to, do they try and work closer and they get hung out? Do they stay wide? Do they try and work a trip, like you said, and maybe get over and only be second or third over? I think it's tough from the 17. I think that's a little fishy, but I'm not tossing him. I'm gonna ride him with him on my A line, and we're gonna see if he runs dead last. Then screw it. Hopefully, one of my other horses wins.
He's one of my top choices. I'm gonna watch him very carefully in the post parade too, and some other things, but. I think he's super interesting. And for people to say, well, again, Pete, I'm so sick of this. It's just my opinion. I'm so sick. Well, Japanese horse never won these until they do it. You know what? Apollo was the only horse that hadn't run when he was like, records are made to be broken, guys. Like you really, to me, if you like the horse, go with the horse. And I have no idea what odds he's going to be. I'm fascinated, but I will say one thing, Paul. A few people have asked me on Twitter and privately through emails, what about all this Japanese money? The whirlpool is different than our pool. So obviously there's going to be a lot of people betting into the Derby, but people like in Hong Kong and whatnot, they're not going to be able to get into this pool. So although he may take a lot of money, it's not going to be from the Far East. Is something that needs to be pointed out, Paul.
Yeah, but I don't think he goes above the morning line of 10-1, and I think it's highly likely he's below that.
Oh, you think he's going to be single digits?
I do too. Yeah, I do.
I don't know.
do too.
He could be. He could be.
Well, now that people know that Howard Kravitz likes him, he could be even money.
Well,
or 50, Paul.
Whoa! Whoa!
Wait, is the internet?
Hey,
I think we're having connection issues.
Oh wait, yeah, we broke up. We broke up.
All right,
Howard, that's a technical.
That is a well. Speaking of TT, it's about that time, Paul. We got two horses left to talk about again.
Oh, I could go to bathroom here, right? I could go to bathroom, and I don't need to be here for this.
I think we should let Pete talk about this horse.
Pete's a TT hater. Guys, we really appreciate everyone watching. We've got two more horses to talk about. And again, we got shows all week long. Please subscribe to the HHH Racing podcast. I hope you're gleaming a lot of great information. We've got pick 4, pick 5 information all week long. Oaks shows, surprise guests. We got trainers and jockeys, guys. Right? Trainers and jockeys that are running horses this weekend are going to be live on this show in the next 2 nights. Paul, I'm going to give you the honor. I'm sorry. You good, Paul? You good? Paul, I'm going to give you the honor of going first. Now, let's let everyone know, because not everyone knows, but most of the world knows by this point. I have a fairly large future wager on Tapit Trice at 60-1. As does Paul. I've touted this horse out in January after he broke his maiden. I liked a lot of things about him. This is my personal best early tout in a Derby horse I've ever had. Does that mean that I think he's a sure thing or he's my top choice? No. But the fact that we've got this horse, Paul, who's going to be around 4, 5-1, 6-1, and we've got him at 60-1, is a success to me. I don't care if he runs up the track or whatever. I'm very proud, as you should be, of touting this horse way back when 4 months ago. Let's talk about Tapit Trice, Paul, who has the 5-hole. And according to Mike Battaglia, he is 5-1 morning line. Paul, Tapit Trice.
Yeah, I think that morning line is pretty good, pretty accurate. Yeah, look, the key with the hardest thing about a future bet, especially when you make them in January, is getting the horse in the gate.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's a lot of ways you can't make the race. Now, I happened to be at Gulfstream when he won the allowance race, February 4th. Got a chance to see him in the paddock and run. And even though that was just an allowance, I mean, I think I mentioned on the show, we had Todd on the show prior to that. I talked to him very briefly in the paddock. This is all speculation, but I just got the feeling he was very confident in this horse right from the get-go. Did he go to Tampa to get the points because it's an easier race? He's had great success at Tampa. I think it's just a matter of he was splitting up this horse and Forte. I thought
This
he ran
stride,
very well.
Paul, this stride is just, I'm pretty sure someone examined it. I believe, and this is not just us being fanboys, he does have the longest stride length in the field for what it's worth. That's actually been talked about a little bit. I'll show the Tampa Bay. Go ahead. Here's the Tampa Bay Derby, just the end of the race.
Yeah, I think Saez did what he had to do last race at Keeneland. We'll get to that one, I'm sure. But, I know it's Tampa, but, he is a long way back here at the top of the stretch. And he is going to be about 8 wide. And right now he's 2, 4, 6, 8. He's 9th and moving. And then just watch him explode down the stretch. Now, look, he's not picking up Secretariat. I get it. But it's a matter of, when he gets into his stride, he is very good. Now, having said that, I think they know that they needed to, from the rail at Keeneland last time, they needed to get him in the race earlier. And I thought Luis Saez did a masterful job of doing that. You just look at the running line. He's not 9th early. He's 3rd out of 11. And you could see, just watch the one here, Louis. He's riding him right out of the gate. He gives him a little tap there. Now, he is slow into stride, as you've pointed out, Howard. But right here, he's mid-pack or better, and he's on the rail. Now, to Pete's point, he is throwing his head a little bit. Does that mean he doesn't like dirt coming at him?
This was a great education, though, and this is what he might have to do in the Derby, because I thought he might get checked right here. I was actually worried. He did sort of lift up his head, but he did calmly right after that, and then he took some dirt. So I don't know if he can handle the Kentucky Derby and all the nonsense on the inside, but this was a fantastic education, Paul. I couldn't have asked for a better prep for Tapit Trice, personally.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I went from a 60-1, let's take a shot in a future bet, to genuinely believing he is the best or second best of this group. And I think he has a very, very good chance to win. I would have picked the 10 or out for a post position. Yeah. So, am I happy about the 5? Well, no, but I'm happy it's not the 1 or the 3, which were both available. So,
they were.
Yeah, look can the post get him beat? Could he come from 15th and run 3rd? Absolutely. But I just think in a field where, as you've talked about, both of you guys, no one has really established themselves. I think this horse is really good. I'm happy to have him. I'm not going to trade my ticket. I don't need to bet him to win on Saturday. I can screw around in other ways, and he will be on my A line on my horizontals.
Vale place at TT Mage the race. Well, he's not there yet. I don't want to jinx ourselves because crazy
stuff made
it to
happen. Tuesday. Yeah.
By the way, Team Bitcoin, did someone do I have a bobblehead out there? I didn't realize.
No, someone commented they want you to make one of me when I was teasing you.
Oh, okay. All right. Look, let's bring up our good friend Jim Pilars. And I want to say this. I have a big shout out and thanks to Jim Pilars, because Jim Pilars, I think I can say this legally, I don't care, actually made the bet for me in Las Vegas. So Jim Pilars, thank you very much for making my bets in Las Vegas. I also have a bet through Twin Spires, but not nearly as much. Jim's got a big future also on Tapit Trice. Jim, let's get this horse home. Let's be fair. And Pete, Pete, let's have you talk, because we've been rambling. Pete, I know you're not nearly as big a fan for Tapit Trice, and it's not just because you don't have a future, but you have some concerns, and I think they are legitimate.
Well, let's start with, first of all, no one loves a gray closer more than I do. I think I've said that many times on this show. I love gray closers. And I have Tapit Trice on my A line. So I
Okay.
agree with you
There we
guys. And I
go.
think,
There we go.
I think
Finally, Paul, he's finally
Well,
come around.
wait. Hey, Paul.
Pete has seen the light.
Paul, who picked Tapit Trice to win in the Bluegrass out of the three of us? Me, you, and that's it. I think, if I recall correctly. Am I right about that? So let's just reverse that back a bit. But so concern wise is basic stuff. It's especially from the 5-hole. So we watched that replay, and when you were talking halfway through, where hey, he broke slow. Now in that race, about 6 or 7 horses got in front of him, and he took some dirt. In the Derby from the 5-hole, you talk maybe 8 or 9 horses can get in front of you. And the thing that Saez did that was so great in that race was as soon as he was behind, he had space on the outside, and he moved him immediately to like the 3 path to where, okay, let's get this big monster out in the clear. In the Derby, thank you, Kyle.
And
Somebody
our
pays
host of
attention.
B&B, who's going to be on
Who's going to be on in a half an hour?
35 minutes. Well, we're going to be wrapping up soon here. Go ahead.
Yep. So Saez did a great job, and I love Saez too, and he did a great job of getting him outside.
Yeah.
In the Derby, you got some other horses who are going to come over and could be crowding that spot. So my worry with Tapit Trice is I think get him out. I don't care if he's 11 wide. Get him out into the lane however you can and give him a straight shot. He just doesn't look nimble to me. And in the Derby, sometimes you have to be – like I don't see him – dominating the race like Rich Strike did, because I don't think he has that nimble ability. That's just for Paul, just screwing around. But I don't know if he makes that kind of ride. Like I don't think he can sort of weave between horses and keep his momentum. I'd like to see him on the outside, just taking one shot and running. If you do that, it depends on how far the horse is that is in the lead. And if you can run them down, you do. Sometimes you don't, unfortunately. And that's what happens in the Derby with these horses who might get stuck a little too far back. That's my concern. That's about it.
I agree with you, Pete. Here's my thinking, and I don't know what the thinking with the connections is going to be. Instead of like rushing them up on the inside to get position, I actually don't think that'd be a good idea in this race. I almost prefer, Pete and Paul, that Pletcher tells him just let him get in stride and like take back even a little bit more than normal for the sole purpose of what you're saying, Pete. To me, the more that he's taken back, I'm not saying the last, but the more that he's not used early, the better chance he has to slip to the outside on the backstretch. If he's used early, Paul, then he could get stuck like in between and in behind horses like for most of the backstretch, which I don't think would be good. So I don't know if that's the plan. But I almost wish, Paul, that Pletcher tells Saez to break, let all their horses go if they want, and just continue to, like Pete said, gradually work your way to the outside as much as possible instead of being used early like he was the Bluegrass. Paul, I'll let you finish the Tapit Trice conversation on what kind of instructions and what's the best way for him to win this race from the 5-hole.
Well, I see what you're saying about getting him in the clear, but I don't want to see him 18th at the first turn in the interest of being in the clear. Pete mentioned 8 or 10 horses. If this horse is 10th when they turn on to the backstretch, I am going to consider us very unlucky if we do not cash that ticket. So if we could get him in the top 10, straightening out somehow, I'd be very happy. And again, you know, hey, someone runs a monster and beats you, you tip your hat to him, but again, I'm not changing now. I think he's the best horse. I don't think he has the best post. If he gets beat, I could see 2 horses beating him, Forte and Angel of Empire. And if that's the case, I suspect I'll still cash a ticket or 2.
Yeah, to me, we're going to go to Forte, but it's not really where he is in the race, Paul, to me and Pete. It's who's around him and if he's like stuck on the inside. Like, I'd much rather be 16th on the outside than like 8th in amongst horses on the inside. You know what I mean? So to me, it's not really where he's positioned as much as how he's positioned, if that makes sense. But
well,
anyway.
horses back up in the Derby bad, and you don't want to be behind a couple of those who are sucking wind really late.
I want to be outside with a clear run. Somehow, I hope Saez can do it. All right, guys. We just have about a few minutes left here, but that's all we need. We really don't need to talk long about Forte. He is the deserved, should be the post-time favorite. He's done nothing wrong. He's a 2-year-old champion. He's 6 for 7. there's no reason to watch replays. We've already seen his replays. You can argue on who got the worst of it in the Florida Derby. The bottom line is he went by Mage and won. Pete, I'll let you talk about this horse first. Forte is just a fantastic, honest, deserved favorite. But is he improving or has he maxed out? Because I think that's the major question that needs to be asked here.
Yeah, I think it is. And I don't think we know, unfortunately. And I think most people's argument is at the price he's going to be, I'm not going to take that chance. And I understand that. So if you're talking about a win bet, and again, I think we talked about this on Twitter a little bit today. I think we get confused sometimes with the difference between a horse that I'm going to bet to win or a horse that I think has a good shot to win. And I'm not going to get beat by. I'm not getting beat by the 2-year-old champion who hasn't lost in the last 5 races and has done it pretty dominantly for the most part in most of those races. You don't want to lose to that. You got Irad, you got Pletcher, you got Rapoli. It's not a horse you want to lose to. And I understand if you say, I'm not betting him to win, but don't tell me this horse can't win. He's just gritty. He finds the wire. And you saw that against Mage. I mean, he looked like he was working a little hard, but he exploded at the end. And he has, if not as long of a stride as Tapit Trice, it sounds like, but he's up there. He strides out and he strides out late, and he has a nose. Even in his workout, you could see when the wire comes, he has a nose for it. So I look at him. I love Forte just as a horse. I hope he runs well. He's one I would consider in like that. I think he's going to hit the board. I just want to see if he improves enough. And if other horses improve enough, like we say, is he improving? Maybe not. But are people that going to be far ahead of him in terms of speed and figures, in terms of the Derby and in terms of talent and in terms of will to win and in terms of just knowing how to get to the wire? I think he's going to be tough. And I just don't want to discount this horse. I love this horse. I hope he runs well.
Paul, your thoughts on Forte, the 2-year-old champion?
I don't think he's done anything wrong. I think he's game. I think he's got the second best jockey in the race right now at this moment in time. I think that I would be concerned about his figures going down 2 races in a row. You know, Tapit Trice went down in Tampa, and, you know, he did have that extremely late, extremely wide trip. It wasn't a fast race. I would be concerned a little bit about betting the favorite whose numbers have gone down 2 consecutive races. But again, for me, straight A, top two selection. He has Nyquist written all over him. You know, everyone was trying to find out a reason why Nyquist was going to not win the Derby, the 2-year-old champ. And what did he do? He won it relatively easily. So
I think Martha agrees there with you, Paul.
Yes, Martha does.
Matt Miller, this is a great point, too. If you like this horse to win, use him in daily doubles to avoid the mattress Mac effect on the win pools. That pool will likely be more accurate, efficient. I agree, Matt. If you people don't know, Mattress Mac, Jim McAvale, a great fan of horse racing from Houston, owns Big Mattress Company, is planning on putting a big win bet on probably Forte, sort of to hedge on his investment that he does. So I agree. This horse is going to be somewhere around 5-2. I would never bet him to win in a million years at 5-2 or even 3-1. But I agree with both of you. He's absolutely an A in any horizontal. If I'm alive I'm not going to let Forte beat me out of a $3,000-$4,000 pick 5. I mean, I'm not crazy. So I just think he's a very bad bet on the win end at the odds he's going to be at. Just
real quick, Howard, just to say, and somebody mentioned in the chat, he was sort of washed out before the Florida Derby, so it didn't look like he was that great going in. He was in a terrible post for that track at that configuration. Yep. So there could be some excuses as to why the figure was a little lower, because a lot of things were going against him. I thought he had to swing a little. We watched how he sort of swung wide. So it may be if he ran a 98 in the Florida Derby, would people like him? Are you going to like him more? If circumstances cause that 95, and that's what scares people is the regression, and maybe he does. Maybe he's just not as good as he was. But do you want to lose, like you just said, do you want to lose a big horizontal bet, or do you want to, what are you going to do? Throw him out of the triple, and you're going to have like your horse who you like that's 15-1 that wins the race, and what are you going to throw him out because his buyer numbers regressed? I mean, there has to be some semblance of common sense when you look at this, and This horse just does everything right. And if he runs out like Essential Quality didn't dominate on numbers, and it didn't look like he necessarily improved at 3, but he still ran. I mean, he ran 4th, so he ran out technically in the live version of the Derby. But you weren't throwing him out. He was right there. He ran his race, and he had probably the toughest trip out of everybody in that race.
Yeah.
So
Now, I'm not going to use
thinking.
him on top in the Super because the value is really going to hurt. If Forte wins, your Super is going to go way down, and the try. And people say, "Oh, it could be a 30 or 41 underneath," but a lot of people play bombs underneath. The winner, whoever wins the race, is really what affects your vertical bet. I mean, so obviously, if there's a bomb that finishes 3rd, 4th, that'll raise the price, but not nearly as much if you can beat Forte on the win end. So I'm talking about verticals now, but he's an absolute use in all horizontals. Guys, as we wrap up the show, I've had a lot of fun. We've had, again, thank you so much for all the people out there. I know we're going to have a lot of people watching as a replay. Please make sure, again, you subscribe to our YouTube channel, HHH Racing Podcast. Check out the Power Plays tip sheet below the video player. Our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Tomorrow, we will be here again, 7 p.m. Eastern. Deep dive, Pete and Paul, and the PPs are out. Deep dive into the Pick 5 that ends in the Kentucky Oaks with 2 fantastic guests, including a trainer and a rider that are both going to be in the Kentucky Oaks. You do not want to miss it. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And then in about 25 minutes, go right back to this channel for Bettin and Boozin to talk about the preliminary feelings on the Oaks. For my wonderful co-hosts, Pete Visco and Paul Halloran, this has been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 253 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing Podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.